we're going to go through our favorite players, our 5 favorite players that we grew up watching that maybe some people have forgotten about. This is always a fun game to play. Um, the meme, I guess it's a tweet, but dudes can just sit around, name old athletes, and have the best time ever. That's what I do all the time with my friends. And I'm sure Jordan does it too. We're going to do it right now.
Oh yeah.
So, Jordan, who are your 5 favorite Tennessee football players that most people have probably forgotten about by now?
Well,
Or not
some of
most
the
people. We're young guys, so maybe they haven't all forgotten about them, but they are names that will probably get lost to the annals of time here in the coming years.
yeah, so some of these players like they're familiar they're familiar names to Vols fans, but may not have heard them in a long time. The first guy that I have mentioned on here, you'll remember his game-winning uh pick six, or maybe it was on a 2-point conversion now that I'm thinking about it, against
No, it was a
Vanderbilt.
pick six. I
It
know who you're
was.
talking about.
Hey, the whistle, I didn't hear it. I didn't hear the whistle. But of
His
course
knee didn't touch the ground.
his knee did not touch the ground, did not touch the ground, did not hear a whistle. But yeah, of course I'm talking about Eric Gordon. I really liked him a lot when he was at Tennessee, and like based on what he did like in that Vanderbilt game, and like he's a pretty solid player for the most part. I know that he was overshadowed a little bit playing with people like Prentice Wagner and everything, but Eric Gordon was a guy that I liked in my childhood, and he was a guy that I made custom sliders for in the old college football games because I liked him so much. I wanted him to be better than he actually was in reality. But Eric Gordon was a guy that I liked a lot at Tennessee, and honestly, I wonder what he's up to now. But that Vanderbilt game will always have a special place in my heart because unfortunately during that time Tennessee was struggling with Vanderbilt when James Franklin was there and everything, and Vanderbilt was shockingly winning 9 games a year. It was nice to beat Vanderbilt, as sad as it says, or as sad as it sounds. It was nice to beat them, and especially in a way like that where.
That was the only time they beat James Franklin, by the way.
Oh yeah, I'm aware. James Franklin was he was a problem when he was Vanderbilt's
Yeah,
coach.
he's a bit of a problem at Penn State right now, but to Penn State,
Yeah,
he can't get past Ohio State and Michigan or whatever other giants there are in the Big Ten. He'll always just be that Mark Richt of the Big Ten now.
yeah, and it's honestly kind of crazy too because I think he had back-to-back nine win seasons at Vanderbilt, and like that's not too much better than what he's doing at Penn State, and he was in the SEC. So I don't know what James Franklin's situation's been in with Penn State, but honestly, when I heard that he was going to Penn State, I was like, wow, this is phenomenal for them. And then he's a great coach, but like I thought he was going to be better. But next player on the list, a little bit of a controversial one. I don't know if you got to see him when you were younger or not, but this guy I'm about to talk about, I thought was the second coming of Eric Berry. And he was very talented, showed lots of flashes. And I'm talking about Jansen Jackson.
Oh yeah, okay. It took me a second with the controversial part, but yeah, highly controversial player.
Yeah, highly controversial player. And I don't like I don't even know how to like really tackle this. I don't agree with like anything that he's done in the past and everything, and I'm
I
not
don't
gonna
think
say that.
anybody has.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna say that he's a good person, but when he was playing at Tennessee before everything came out, because some unfortunate things you can look up online happened after he left Tennessee. But I mean, he had pretty good stats his sophomore season. He had almost 70 tackles, 4 for a loss, and 5 interceptions. And I remember when he was playing alongside Eric Berry, I mean, he was even sticking out as a freshman. And honestly, it was to Tennessee's detriment. But one thing I always remember from Jansen Jackson was the North Carolina game when Tennessee was playing in the Music City Bowl. When North Carolina was going down the field and they eventually um, kicked the field goal to go into overtime. Right before then, in case someone's in case people have forgotten, he leveled a dude in the center of the field. Now it ended up being a penalty, but man, did he lay him out. And I know it contributed to Tennessee losing the game, but when I saw that hit based on what he was showing from the rest of the year, I was really excited about him. And it's very disappointing where his life ended up heading. And, of course, he got kicked off Tennessee. And then I don't want to mention what he did on the podcast, but you can look it up. Very heartbreaking story for Tennessee, but I do remember him being a very exciting player. Now, the third player I have on here is a little bit more obscure, and I'm talking about Devin Young. I
Oh yeah.
love I love that guy so much because he was only 5'8" on a good day, and he was not that half bad of a kick returner. And I just remember him being fast in the old college, the NCAA games, and I was like, you know what? We don't play him much at receiver. I know he played a little bit of running back, but we didn't use him too much in the offense. So I made sure to use him a lot in the football games, and
You
I
did him a
was
favor.
Oh, yeah, I did him a favor, and I was putting absurd stats with him and Tyler Bray on there. And he's just always fun. I like the smaller players. I'm not a very tall guy myself, so it's good seeing some of these little guys go out there. And I don't know why. I don't know why. He's just stuck with me a little bit. But the second guy, a little bit more familiar, and he played for the Titans for briefly too. Luke Stalker.
Oh.
uh, Tight end for Tyler Bray at Tennessee. The first time that Luke Stalker really stood out to me is I remember Tennessee was playing Kentucky, and he absolutely like leveled a guy. Tyler Bray like gave him the pass, he lowered the shoulder and leveled the dude, and kept going.
He is a
And
Kentucky native, so it probably meant more to him.
oh yeah,
Berea,
yeah,
Kentucky.
yeah, and like I don't know, he was pretty good. Like he just kind of got overshadowed during the time though, because there was a lot of other talent Tennessee had in their receiving core and whatnot. But I mean, he was good for at least 300 yards a year, and his junior year he got 5 touchdowns. But he was always a guy I liked a lot too, and he was big, big guy as well too. He kind of course, he wasn't as good, but he had a kind of like a similar build to like a Jason Witten, which is, of course, would get every Tennessee fan excited. So,
Yeah.
and not to mention, it was around the time when they started rolling out the Revo speeds, and he was one of the first players I seen to wear it. So, and I thought those were the coolest helmets in the world when they came out. So, I had a little bit of a weird fixation on that too. But then number one, um, Zach Rogers. Zach Rogers. I love that guy so much. He's another guy that I feel like got overshadowed because he was playing alongside people like Derrick Rogers, Justin Hunter, Cordell Patterson. But I'll never forget when he was playing against NC State. He caught that deep touchdown pass from Tyler Bray and everything, and he was always just a reliable receiver that like I just felt like he was overlooked. He was like wide receiver number 4, yet he always contributed. And unfortunately, he never ended up doing anything in the NFL. But I always thought he was a guy on Tennessee's roster that could have been much better if he didn't have so much talent around him. And in his senior year, he had 7 touchdowns. And that's while that, let me see who else he was playing with here on that team. Because he was sharing, I'm pretty sure Justin Hunter and Derrick Rogers were on that team. Maybe Derrick Rogers is gone, but I mean, like they had Michael Rivera around that time too, and he was just a very underrated Tennessee player. Plus, his older brother played at Tennessee too, so he was kind of like a legacy guy too. So
Yeah.
I always think of those players fondly, especially because they were from like the first couple of years I started watching football, and these were like the first people I was really learning, becoming a fan.
Yeah, and Zach Rogers. Now that you mention, come to think of it, I think I went to church with him for a little bit in Nashville.
Really?
It was after he was at UT. This has been several years now, but he married a girl that grew up at the church that I went to. So yeah, he was there at least for a little while. I don't know if he still goes there, probably not, but yeah, did see him around every now and again. Never talked
Yeah.
to him though.
Well, funny thing about him is I got a little bit of a connection with him too. My girlfriend, her sister, little convoluted here. Her sister's husband He actually was like personal friends with like Austin Rogers, and he knew that I was a Tennessee fan. He was too. He was talking to me about him. He's like, "Yeah, me and Austin are like really good friends and all that stuff." And I told him how I was a fan of Zach Rogers and stuff. So seems like a lot of people in the Middle Tennessee area have some sort of connection to the Rogers family.
Yeah. All right. So my list is not nearly as obscure as yours. Honestly, these were just names that I thought of off the top of my head that people are probably going to forget about here in several years because these guys just, they had solid careers here. They just weren't necessarily legends. I didn't think, but again, these are mostly guys from when I first began watching Tennessee football. Um, the first name on my list, and these are in no particular order, by the way. Um, Mount McCullers, Daniel McCullers from the
Oh,
2012 team. Um, Obviously, he was a part of the Swiss cheese Sal defense, which is unfortunate, but he did make it a few years, I think, with the Steelers in the NFL. Um, he's a beast up there on the defensive line. What do you go about 6'7"
oh yeah.
there in
I
the
think
middle?
he was like 6'7", maybe pushing 6'8", like 350. I'll never forget when I heard he was coming to Tennessee. There was a picture of him at practice, next to like one of the trainers, and he looked like he was the trainer's father. Like he was like like towering over this dude, and I was like, we got a literal giant on our team. There's no way that this man could be blocked. Like he looked like a veteran NFL player just coming in at probably like 20 years old or whatnot. Like just absolute mammoth of a human being. I forgot about him, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, that's at least good because some of these guys you will not have forgotten about. But I did want to mention him because that was one of the names that came to mind. But again, a beast of a player when he was here. Did make it a couple years in the NFL, which is good to see for these guys post college. Another name, and this is again another one that I really just first remembered when I first started watching Tennessee football. This is a name that I just remember, and him being kind of a leader on the defense and dealt with some pretty serious adversity off the field. I know he battled cancer for a little bit, and that's Herman Lathers.
Mm.
He was a tackling machine when he was here, and again, unfortunately, did not have much of a career past Tennessee because of some of the complications that he dealt with. But that's just a name that sticks out to me as like one of the first linebackers that I remember here. Him and because it was Nick Gervais was the one that was with
Nick
him
Gervais, yeah.
back in 2010. But I remember both of those guys. That's again because Jordan, it's similar to you. That's about when I first started watching Tennessee football.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Herman Lathers too. I mean, it was unfortunate with the cancer and everything, but I mean, he was a pretty good player when he was on the field at Tennessee, and everything. And I was always a bigger fan of Nick Gervais because he was just a little guy out there and a walk on too. But it was cool. It was cool watching them play and stuff. And believe it or not, I'm actually like Facebook friends with Herman Lathers because I've told Tucker before, when I was a kid, I was such a huge fan of like all these little teams. I tried to add every Tennessee player that would add me, every like SEC player. And he was one of the ones that actually added me back. So shout out to our Facebook friendship, Herman Lathers. We're probably going like 15 years strong.
How about that? You love to hear that. All right, these three, at least two of them have been mentioned in this show already. Um, but number three on my list is Justin Hunter.
Mm,
Um, for nostalgia purposes, again, one of the first ones I remember. I remember his freshman year thinking this is going to be so great. Tennessee is going to have him for like 2 or 3 more years. He's going to probably wind up having a great NFL career. And then that ACL tear happened at Florida. And that I just never felt like he was the same after that. Like, and part of it too, like 2012, Cordero Patterson was here, and you had a couple good receivers on that team. Um, but he had like one touchdown catch to beat, I think it was the Chargers in about 2013 for the Titans at the very end of the game, which is That's about my only NFL memory of him. Although I think he did play for them in the 2014 season because I think he had like a touchdown catch overturned or something at a game that I was at that season. But yeah, another one of the first good receivers that I remember vividly from Tennessee.
Yeah, he was one of my favorites as a kid. I remember his freshman year, he started to break out, and my first football game ever was that Florida game that he played in. And I remember he showed a little bit of signs there. And then, of course, like when Tyler Bray ended up taking over as the quarterback, I think the Memphis game later on that season, I mean, they seemed to form a pretty good connection there. And I remember he was always a deep threat, 6'4". Like, I honestly, I don't know how old I was at the time, maybe around 11 years old. 11-year-old me was thinking that he was going to be the next Carl Pickens. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out that way, but I was more excited with Justin Hunter than I even was Derrick Rogers and Cordell Patterson, at least at one point. And then, of course, things changed later on. But Justin Hunter is an awesome, awesome Tennessee guy.
And then this next one, also a wide receiver. He was mentioned at some point in this show already, and that is David Rickey himself, Derrick Rogers. Because I remember it was one of my first Tennessee football games because there was a stretch, I think from like 2005 to like 2010, maybe 2011, where I was going to like one game a year. And I remember he opened that Kentucky game with a super long run back on the opening kickoff. So, that's still a pretty vivid memory of mine. And he was a pretty explosive player when he was here. He just, again, happened to play on some not so great teams.
That and unfortunately the off the field issues and stuff too, I
Yeah.
felt like limited his potential. But if you're talking about like pure talent, he's one of the better one receivers Tennessee's had. And I don't know how I if you go look up his highlight tape right now, he has some of the crazier plays that you'll see from Tennessee, like that catch that he got, I think, against Vanderbilt, where he was sandwiched in between those two defenders and lost his helmet and still made the catch. And then I recall him having a couple of good ones in the end zone too. I mean, he was a very dynamic player, and it's just unfortunate that his career couldn't have went in a different direction because he's definitely one of my favorite players growing up too. And man, those Derek Dooley offenses! If only Tennessee had a defense to go
Yeah.
with it.
Especially 2012, man. I just think back to those teams. Like 2011, that team could be better if it's not for injuries. And whatever happened at Kentucky happened at Kentucky. That's not really on injuries, but and then 12, that was by far the most disappointing team that I think Tennessee's had, just because there were real expectations that that team could at least make a little bit of a push that year to win 8-9 games, maybe compete for an SEC East title, but just wasn't able to that season. And then lastly on my list, and I feel like there's a few different linebackers you could mention in this group, but I'm going to go with Jalen Reeves-Maben. I know
Mm.
he's not very forgotten. That when he was on the field, he was terrific here at Tennessee. Again, like we mentioned earlier, did have some injury troubles here. I think really before his time at Tennessee, he was struggling with it, and then after he did as well. But he's one of those guys like Brandon Bolden, or there's another Patriots player who was a receiver who made it a career out of being a special teamer, and he's doing that with the Lions right now. JRM is, and that's terrific. But there's honestly several that I could have mentioned in here at linebacker. I mean, you mentioned AJ Johnson earlier. Very unfortunate off-field circumstances there. That honestly, I mean, now that we know more, it really wasn't his fault. It just damaged his career. Kurt Magid is another name that
Mm.
comes to mind. That's a guy that I thought was a nice player when he was healthy. Um, but again, just didn't really make it past Tennessee. So there's like linebackers from that period. Tennessee had some nice ones. They just couldn't really make splashes afterward. Um, oh man, another one just came to mind. Darren Kirkland. He had at least one or
Oh,
two really nice seasons,
oh, I
but just
forgot about
never made
him.
it past Tennessee.
Yeah, man, those were some good linebackers at one point. And then Reeves-Maben, man, he was a tackling machine. So was AJ Johnson, one of the best tacklers in Tennessee history. But Jalen Reeves-Maben was a really fun player to watch. And I went to Centennial High School in Franklin, Tennessee. And the year before I got there, which would have been, I think, 2012, he played at Clarksville Northeast. And I heard from some of the upperclassmen that Jalen Reeves-Maben was on the team, but he didn't just play linebacker. He played quarterback. And apparently he ran for 400 yards against Centennial during that
That's
season.
wild.
400 yards. And, during that time, it was around the same time when A.J. Johnson was there. Tennessee had the beast package with him where A.J. Johnson had like 6 rushing touchdowns. He had more rushing touchdowns on the team than any of our running backs, for being a linebacker in goal line position. And I always wondered why Tennessee didn't try to do the same thing with Jalen Reeves-Maben after A.J. Johnson's gone. I'm like, here we go, a high school quarterback that could run for days, like leader of your defense. Why not just put him in?
Well, now that you mention it, like the Lions have done it with him on fake punts. Like I know they did it at least once against the Chiefs a couple years back.
I actually didn't see that, but
that was a Thursday night football game, I think.
Well, see, he's got that athleticism and stuff. I feel like it would have been cool to see him get utilized on offense at Tennessee, because that was one of my favorite things from my childhood. I was talking about NCAA earlier when that whole AJ Johnson thing was going down. His first rushing touchdown, exactly what I did. I got right on the NCAA. I made him play both ways, and then I played a dynasty where he was our starting running back and our starting linebacker.
Yeah, I mean Tennessee had decent running backs on that team. I guess Marlon Lane was kind of up and down. Rajon Neal, very underrated running back here at Tennessee. Again, just did not have the support on defense that he needed, but a good running back overall, but just did not have as many rush touchdowns as AJ Johnson. And we've seen teams do this in the SEC in the past. I want to say, was it Auburn that moved Cam Petway over from tight end and paired him with Kerryon Johnson in the backfield in like 2016? Like, honestly, that's such a fun idea. Like, can you imagine if Tennessee, well, I don't really know if Tennessee has that big of a linebacker right now, but like if you had just stuck Arion Carter in the backfield, just made him run Wildcat on offense, wouldn't that be so fun?
It would be so much fun. And you're just bringing back memories to me now, because I'm thinking about the old Baylor team, man. Like when I think his name is Laquan McGowan.
400-pound Laquan McGowan, yeah.
Yeah, 400-pound tight end out there. And he was actually getting touchdowns and stuff too. I mean, like the most athletic 400-pound man I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's fun when teams do that stuff.
Yeah. It's fun to have fun. And Josh Heupel likes to have fun, don't get me wrong, but he's not tried any of that just yet. Maybe he experiments with Boo Carter this year, but it's not as fun as throwing your linebacker defensive end in as like a tight end or a running back, or even like a fullback on a fullback dive. Like because UConn did this a couple years ago, where they basically just did the old refrigerator play from the '85 Bears, where they just handed the ball off to the refrigerator and he'd just score all their touchdowns. Because they had a defensive lineman that had like 5 or 6 touchdowns that year in the interior. They tried it against Tennessee, but Tennessee stopped them all every single time they tried to run that package.
And then like Florida last year too, Desmond, I'm forgetting his last
name.
Desmond
Watson.
Desmond Watson. I remember him getting he got a carry last year, right? I don't know if he got more than one, but I remember seeing a clip of him in the backfield, and like that's just outrageous. That is just outrageous to have someone like him out there in the backfield. But that stuff's fun, man. And then like even with the NFL, like when Penei Sewell was like out there throwing the ball and everything, like it's fun seeing those trick plays. Hopefully Tennessee can have some player like that this year. Maybe we'll put Josh Shell out there on the goal line situation.
Yeah,
get my hand off.
He may have some tight end experience in his background. You never know. Being a defensive end, I'm just trying to think. Like Princeton Fant was the last real utility piece you had like that. Although he was an offensive guy, so he, they weren't playing him both ways over the course of a game. But maybe Tennessee tries something like that again in the future. I don't know.
If Tennessee somehow ends up having a down year this year, that's one way you can make me happy. You can make me happy by just doing an oddball thing. If Tennessee starts losing, start putting defensive players on offense. We'll just make it a spectacle.
Yeah, that'd be really fun. You just enjoy the suffering while you can, I guess, is the
Yeah.
best way to put it. But hopefully, there is no suffering to be had this season if you're Tennessee.